see you.
Now we can hear. We can see the page is good, and I just want to say that welcome. You have to be able to hear the speaker, otherwise it doesn't help so much, but you'll see at least everything we're trying to project. What I was saying before was that we were not able to carry on the last time that we had glamour, uh, but we continue, and that you can work, of course, if you can detect your own glamours and really which one of us is entirely free of them. Uh, you can work on them as well. It's a wonderful little book, and it deals with a problem which afflicts the majority of humanity. It's not quite like illusion. Those people who are truly mentally focused have a greater problem with illusion. And people like ourselves, of course, are supposed to be able to work with the mind held steady in the light of the soul. Increasingly, we will be able to do that. I just would like to welcome you here that with BL and Joe as co-hosts and really helping me along the way. And Martha, nice to see you. And Francois, let's see. I'm jumping too far. Um, yeah, Martha and Anna Sklar and Annette Ebbett and Antoinette. Welcome, all of you. And Carl, nice to see you. And Catherine from Australia. And Francois, yes, hello. And Georgina Sprague and Joan Schofield, welcome. Karen Gritzka out in Portland. And Catherine O'Brien in New Zealand, welcome. Marianne Larson in Sweden, hi. And Yankee Retudink. Let's see if I jump too fast, and then I lose it. Let's see here. Well, I know you're here, yes. And Mayor Santos, yes, you are here. Both of you, welcome. And uh, let's see here. There's got to be a better way of doing this, but okay. Odile, welcome to you. And Olivia, of course, who has been so important in founding this approach and encouraging it. Welcome, Olivia. And Vivian, welcome. And Yvonne Weniger and Winnie and Zenaidi. Hi, everybody. So glad to see you here continuing with us. The Tibetan's material, is so very, very rich. It's such an understatement when he says, I have given you more than you can ever absorb. He might as well hit the big Japanese drum when he says that. That's absolutely the truth. But we can attempt to absorb and to apply. And during the approximately 4 years that we have before the Great Conclave, actually now a little less, we are in a position to absorb a great deal if we will. If we will. Now, just looking back here, and my colleagues tell me that this material can be seen, so I'm trusting. I just want to give the idea of where we have been. Dissipation. is what we're working on. And it is the open door to the future, a much clearer future wherein the sun, symbolically speaking, shines, and we are not veiled, cloaked, miasmad by glamour. Only thus can humanity be helped to leave behind the errors, the glamors, and the failures of the past. And certainly, if we really study what is plaguing humanity at the present time, there are many plagues, and one of them is a big psycho-spiritual plague, and it has to do with the ignorance produced by glamour and, where applicable, the state of illusion. So DK tells us it is this technique which brings freedom from glamour and which can transform human living. Now, how important that is, okay? And so bring in, he says, the new civilization and the new culture. So when we work with these techniques, let's bear in mind we are transforming human living and assisting in bringing in the new civilization and culture, the Aquarian civilization and culture, which is due to begin astronomically in the year 2117, when Venus again crosses by transit, from our perspective anyway, the face of the sun. So, probably people like ourselves who are intent on helping will, probably have another incarnation during that span, which is about 100 years from now, and we want to know how to make the best of it. This dissipation can be carried forward by disciples in all parts of the planet, and hopefully that's what we are becoming, a true disciple, and then going on, he says, aided by world aspirants, the world aspirants. Now, does he mean there, I think he means a stage a little more spasmodic in its service than the true disciple. But when he uses the word world, well, especially world disciple, we may be speaking of an initiate of the of the third degree. It will, however, be primarily the work of those whose ray focus makes astral living the line of least resistance. Well, let me say, having the sixth ray, as all of those participants in the Glamour C group had, makes them gravitate towards the emotional body and equips them to help solve the very difficulties to which they are prone. Now, when we have a difficulty and we learn to overcome it, we have to help others who have had that same type of difficulty but have not yet solved it. So anyway, their ray focus makes astral living the line of least resistance, and their learning, let's say, they are the ones who have learnt or are learning to dominate, may I say this, astral living, to dominate it by the power of thought and mental light. One thing, may I say, that you will agree with, I'm sure, is that when you study excuse me, the occasional, Anyway, when you study master decay, you are being introduced to a highly intellectual, light-filled disciple of Master KH and of the Christ. And it is inevitable that the light within our mind, as reflecting the light of the soul, that light will increase. If you've been with it for quite a long time, I'm sure you have recognized this to be the case. And who are these people? Okay? They are, it says, these are the six ray people. In the first instance, aided by disciples, aspirants and disciples from the second and fourth ray. So the sixth ray inclines one to be wildly affected by glamour, but later, under the influence of the second and fourth ray, the sixth ray can become an asset in this fight against this cloud, this darkening, this miasma, this prison of inappropriate emotional reaction. And we're taking this up. It may be that many of you, myself, whatever, may gravitate towards a number of the seed groups, and maybe a different seed group is your main focus. It could be, but it certainly doesn't hurt to learn how to attack the glamour, which is the major problem for the majority of human beings, and DK calls it a world problem, right? And it is a serious problem. It is so serious that DK said both AAB and I regard glamour with, and then he uses this word, horror, because it is so obstructive of the truth that comes from the great light of the soul and beyond. So that takes us to our present reading, this dissipation. It's about the dissipation of glamour. In time and space, says the Tibetan, this task will be, first of all, instituted and controlled in group formation only by aspirants whose soul and personality rays are the sixth, or by those whose astral bodies are conditioned by the sixth ray. Now, he really emphasizes the necessity of the sixth ray in this kind of work, and I once did a kind of analysis of the disciples who at one time or another worked with DK, maybe 50 of them, and I discovered, as you would think would be the case, that the majority of astral bodies were on the sixth ray. Also, we might think that there were a lot of personalities on the sixth ray, and there were. So the interesting ray chart, which in my mind emerged as an average, was the second ray soul, the sixth ray personality, the fourth ray mind, the sixth ray emotional body, and the seventh ray, believe it or not, etheric physical body. And even though when tallying, adding up, shall we say, the ray charts of those students, there was not one who had exactly that combination. So that would have been the average combination of the average disciple in DK's group, but there was not one who had it that way. Anyway, don't forget your ray chart. Remember your ray chart, because everything you do in life will be, in your incarnation, will be conditioned by that ray chart. And you can stand back and observe yourself, for good or for ill, working according to the expression of the rays in your ray chart. And sometimes you will be swept, that's the word he uses, you will be swept by a ray which was prominent in a previous life, most likely the life immediately previous. It's not going anywhere unless it's being repeated, but you can be swept by that energy. So as you're studying your glamors and trying to be rid of them, keep your focus on the rays that may be producing those glamors. Okay, so it's a task, and it's inaugurated, initiated, instituted, and controlled by those with a prominent sixth ray. And then DK goes on and says, when they have grasped the nature of the work to be done and, quote, fanatically adopted the technique of light in the service of the race. Now, may I say, you will notice here that the word fanatically is descriptive. It's not a indication of DK criticizing these people. It's simply an indication that they will do this in their methods of using this. Well, it's the technique that we use when we do the glamour meditation, but they do it with very strong intensity. So when they've done this, DK goes on, their work will be completed by second ray disciples working from the ashrams of those masters who take disciples. And I think that's very interesting. The great synthetic ray is the second ray, and in a way, we would say it is responsible for rounding things out which have been initiated by disciples on other rays. If you study the book Letters on Occult Meditation, you will see how the indigo ray absorbs all the others and brings them into a state of harmonious blended relationship. Now, I suppose in our soul, many of us are on the second ray, but we may have come off the sixth ray not so far back in our incarnational history. And certainly we have a lot of experience with it as we consider the age of Pisces through which we have been passing. So our experience with the sixth ray is quite strong, even though ultimately many of those in DK's work will naturally have the second ray as their soul ray. The work, he goes on, the work done by these two groups will be finally revealed and at a much later back date by those aspirants and disciples who will swing into astral activity when the fourth ray again begins to manifest. And well, maybe we'll use the fourth ray color here. There are a number of them, but that is the color yellow. It's a Mercurian color. Just check out Esoteric Psychology, Volume 1, around page 420, 421, and you'll see the different kinds of colors associated exoterically or esoterically with the seven rays. Now, that's happening now. What he's talking about is happening right now. So basically, this is happening now and at the year 2025. There was actually an influence of the fourth ray, believe it or not, in the year 1924, just before the great conclave of the 20th century, 1925, and the ashrams were getting ready to be transported, many of them, onto the Buddhic plane. So it makes sense that there would be an infusion of Ray 4 energy just before that happened. And also, let's remember that the new group of world servers is particularly associated with the fourth ray. And the United Nations, with its Scorpio sun sign, is particularly associated with the fourth ray. So, and there have been other times too when DK said, well, the fourth ray is coming into power very soon, so there is no real cause for great concern. Something like that, he said, as if this fourth ray could somehow harmonize the past with the future in the present. Think about that for a minute. We would like the harmony. It's the higher part of the fourth ray, and that era of peace that is promised when Satan, symbolically the personality, will be bound for 1,000 years is coming. And the Christ himself has had particular relation with a group in which the fourth ray is very prominent. Now, when he is finished with his task and with the Buddha moves on to heights undreamed by us, well, then Pythagoras, Master K.H., will take over, and chances are there will be a stronger emphasis upon the fifth ray. Right now, the Christ is concluding his relationship with those in whom the fourth ray has been prominent. And so it's more the end of a long period of instruction. It is the climax of that period of instruction. But all of us have to learn how to use that fourth ray in a positive manner, and that's not the warlike manner. It's the harmonious manner, even though harmony is usually preceded by a kind of stirring or awakening conflict. The conflict can wake you up, and then you have to solve the issue in harmony. So all this let's just say the beginning of the fourth ray work, we can feel it coming, and the year 2025 becomes very important. There are groups preparing for that. We are preparing for that. The 2025 initiative group is preparing for that with Alexander Ilchuk and Katya, Kate Kaufman, and their co-workers. We have our eyes on the year 2025, but we can't just relax about it, and just say, okay, well, that's coming and that's great and we'll all get a lift. Well, we have to work at it and prepare properly. Okay, therefore, says the Tibetan, the work of dissipating glamour is carried forward by those who come out into manifestation along the lines of energy which embody the second, fourth, and sixth rays. So, and they were particularly the group that benefited from the moving of the ashrams onto the Buddhic plane. We can understand, can we not, how 2, 4, and 6 are numbers which correlate with these soft line rays. They are the only soft line rays, actually, 2, 4, and 6. And they have a new place. And what that really means, if you think of it, friends, is that when you think of yourself working in connection with the ashram, the Buddhic plane becomes very important to you. And how through the building of the Antakarana, you are, what shall we say, positioning yourself for the newer type of work which will dispel illusion and banish glamour. So this debate goes on. You'll notice that I pause every once in a while for a little bit of assimilation of what we have read, because you could read something over and just go on and on and on, but it's important to take it in and let it really impress you, if that is possible, and surely for us and what we are striving for, it is possible. DK says, I emphasize this as disciples frequently undertake tasks for which they are not particularly fitted, and whose rays do not aid them in accomplishment, and sometimes prevent that accomplishment. Now, there was an example. There was a man, his initials were LTSK. I'm forgetting right now what they stood for, but it was all very appropriate, and he was beset by glamour. He was beset by a glamour which arose because he was attempting a task for which he was ill-fitted. He was interested, but not really fitted to work therein in a productive way. What was that task? He fancied himself something of a scientist or a conveyor of the kind of scientific knowledge which was emerging during that part of the 20th century. And DK said, look, yes, you do have a fifth-ray mind, but you are not equipped to really enter this field and make any kind of contribution. His real contribution was made along the line of financing the Tibetans' books, and making sure they were distributed. But his sort of false passion was all of the really interesting scientific things that were emerging. And basically, while he was certainly allowed to discover more and more about that fifth-ray approach, in terms of his service and his self-conception, he was barking up the wrong tree, basically. So, again, DK says, I emphasize this as disciples frequently, not just now and then, okay, undertake tasks for which they are not particularly fitted. Yes, there might be something that gives them a little bit of an entree into the field, but not particularly in a way that would really help those who are the true servers in that field. And usually such an impulse comes from within, from the personality, or from within the personality. It's not particularly a soul impulse. So they don't succeed. And that's a lesson to all of us. And in fact, we may be prevented, true accomplishment may be prevented. Now he goes on and says, the whole subject is related to consciousness, to the second aspect, and concerns the forms through which mankind becomes progressively aware. Now, there are some people who just look at consciousness as, the quotation is the epiphenomena of the brain. In other words, that true consciousness emerges from what is really the material expression of consciousness, that it emerges from the material brain. Now that's a really big mistake, caused, I suppose, by the glamour of personality, the glamour of egotism. Okay, glamour is caused by the recognition which man has himself, and has occultly been said, quote, man only becomes aware of reality when he has destroyed that which he has himself created. In the beginning, what's being said here is that so many of our creations, so many of our becomings, you might say, are simply obstructive to the truth. Yes, we thought it up, we felt it, we took it for real, but it's not really real, even though we created it or became it in a deeper sense. So this whole relationship between consciousness and materiality is such an important relationship when it comes to understanding the nature of glamour. Okay. So man only becomes aware of reality, and isn't that, may I say, what we want? Man only becomes aware of reality when he has destroyed that which he has himself created. It doesn't speak too highly, does it, of our first attempts at creation. Okay. These forms fall into two major groups. So maybe we have time to take a look at those, and, whoa, that's a long paragraph. But maybe we can look at that before we get into our meditation. Now, what has man created himself, which is basically contributing to his confinement in glamour? Point one. Those forms which are of very ancient origin and which are the result of human activity, human thinking, and of human error. And may I say that when he speaks of the word human, I think he is confining himself to personality creativity. He goes on to say they embrace all the forms which the desire nature of man has created down the ages, and are, note this, the nebulous substance of glamour. Glamour, now bear this in mind, glamour is subtle, but not truly subjective. There is a difference between what is subtle and what is truly subjective and of the soul. Okay. And they are the nebulous substance of glamour. Nebulous from the physical sight, but dense from the angle of the astral plane. So they are subtle, obstructive, and much more dense than the astral plane would be if it was affected properly by the Buddhic plane and by the sun, symbolically speaking, but maybe more than symbolically speaking. They are that which provides the incentive behind all striving and activity upon the outer plane, as man attempts to satisfy desire. I'll put one of those desire colors. And they are so common. Everybody is desiring for things, for occurrences, for circumstances, for conditions upon the outer plane. Maybe you want a nicer car or a better house or God knows what. It's all outer and you want it. And that wanting, that aspiration for that which passes away blocks you from the true apprehension of truth. Now we have to ask how much we really love the truth. How much do we really love the truth? And hopefully that is an increasing measure. From these forms, the individual aspirant has ever to rid himself, emerging after so doing through that gate, which we call the second initiation into wider consciousness. Now, this is somehow really important because all true members of the new group of world servers have achieved the second initiation. If we speak of the new group of world servers in a casual way, we can avoid the requirement of the second initiation. But DK tells those members, true members, to be on the lookout for those who are passing through the birth of the Christ in the heart. And not only that, to be on the lookout for those who are passing through the baptism, maybe by fire, the second initiation. So, of what type of desires? It's a question to think about. Are we ridding ourselves? If you watch television, probably in any country. I'm not much of a TV watcher, but okay, sometimes I see things. People want a lot of things, and the commercial interests found on TV want to sell them those things. There's a lot about food on the TV, a lot. And always many more, what can I say, chefs are appearing with their methods and their final projects. There's exercise equipment so your body can look better. There's just all kinds of things unnecessary to the true occultist. And how long will this go on? I suspect it will be reduced during the Aquarian age, but it will go on for a while. What are they selling now? Of what type is that which the commercials insist you must have? So many things, but of course, we're not all as happy as kings. Generally speaking, kings are not so happy as that old story about the sword of Damocles tells us. Then what else? So this is what man has created, number one, and I'm just going to emphasize that. And there's even more in the second paragraph. Those forms, says the Tibetan, which are being constantly created and ceaselessly produced in response to the aspirational nature of humanity, and which provide the enticements which lead the man along towards high personal achievement in the first instance and spiritual achievement later. Well, it's an improvement, isn't it, over the normal run-of-the-mill desire. So the aspirational nature is at work here. They have in them, says the Tibetan, the indications of the new and the possible. These likewise, now here is the strangeness of what he's trying to point out, because sounds pretty good so far, doesn't it? These likewise, strange as it may seem, constitute a glamour, for they are temporary and illusory, and must not be permitted to hide the real. And that's a really good sentence about what glamour does. It hides the real. Now, a lot of people are perfectly happy to live in this shielded from the real. They even feel relieved and no longer so challenged when they can hide from the real. And if we're doing that, do we know we are doing it? Well, probably we don't really know. Anyway, these high aspirations must not be permitted to hide the real. Think about that. In this attempt to determine what is real, much expenditure of illumined thought is necessary. I spent a week with a friend from Berlin who helped me in many ways of a technical nature, but his idea and mine about what was real were totally, or was totally, divergent. Or his ideas and my ideas were totally divergent. It was his ray configuration on the third and fifth ray that gave him his impression of the real. It was my ray configuration very much on the second and fourth ray, which gave me a similar evaluation, but very different from his. So we're oftentimes found enmeshed in that which hides the real. That reality, says the Tibetan, will precipitate itself at the right moment once the higher light pours in. And when that happens, of course, that precipitation is a great expression of the divine plan. That reality will descend on earth, and we have a big responsibility there to make sure it really does. They are indicative of the real, these sort of high aspirations, these high visions of attainment. And notice the word enticement. It's not entirely a word free from sin, as it were. It's the finger of enticement, it's often called. And you are lured into what you think is quite wonderful, only to discover that it has blocked your way to a true apprehension of the real. That reality will precipitate itself at the right moment once the higher light pours in. These enticements, okay, they, says the Tibetan, are indicative of the real. Indicative. So they point to it sometimes, but they're not the real thing. They are indicative of the real and often mistaken for the real. Let's see what else. They are in conflict with the old thoughts and desires of the past and must eventually give way to the factual presence of the real. The factual presence of the real. In other words, we can talk a lot about these things, but is that energy of the real factually present? That is the big question. And I would say, in the case of so many of us, wouldn't you say so, too? We have the theory and not the factual presence of that for which the theory stands. I remember in the arcane school, may have mentioned it before, we reached a point of study where basically it was saying to us, okay, you've got a lot of theory now. Turn it into fact. And, well, that's a different game. These upreachings, you might say, they provide, in times of crisis, the great testing for all aspirants and disciples, evoking the subtlest form of discrimination. Okay. I mean, to discriminate between the subtle and the subjective is already a big leap. To discriminate between high aspirations for achievement and the true presence of the energies of those achievements is also a great step. But once, says the Tibetan, but once that testing has been triumphantly passed, is there a hint there? Is there a hint, my Scorpio friends? Humanity is that kingdom monadically, which is ruled by Scorpio, or at least the monads are gathered on the Buddhic plane under Scorpio. But once that testing has been triumphantly passed, then can the task of dissipating both these types of glamour be given to the disciple and aspirant, may I say, even as they have been given to us. I mean, we're not fully achieved yet, okay, but we have been awarded the proper meditation. DK goes on with the emphasis upon the immediate need or any particular and current world glamour. All right, friends, that should be it for this evening here in Finland. And I'll go back to where we began and kind of take it down. I think Jill told me that next we meet on the 29th of October for our glamour work.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you, BL. All right. Okay. Current world glamour. Okay. Now, so, whoa. too many numbers. Okay. So this is the end of, is this the end of program 184 or 185? I think, I'm guessing.
It's the end of program 185.
And we've been reading number 122, and from what page to what page have we gone? I mean, as usual, not very much, I suspect. Okay. Where are we? Okay, we're on page 201, right? And we have begun at, I suppose, 199. I think so. Please correct me if I'm incorrect. 199 to 201. And today has been the 8th of October. Okay, and
You messed up your 201 and 8 October.
Okay, reading 123 it will be, and 201. Yeah. All right, you know, it's always nice to know where you belong. And the next meeting, the 29th of October. Of October, yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. All right, friends. That's about an hour's worth of study of important material if we want to understand glamour and its context, and you know, basically we have to admit that we are still subject to glamour. I don't know how we could think that we are not. Even the rich young man of the third degree had his own high glamours, or maybe we could begin to call them illusions. So we who are striving eventually towards the third degree, well, okay, we will not yet be relieved. But when the tongues of fire descend from heaven at the fiery second initiation, taken in group form, like the Masonic FC, it's called, DK gives it so I can repeat it, the fellow craft, or the craft of the brotherhood, then we can take that initiation, which is no longer simply the baptism by water, but by fire as well. If you know, to have a little fun with this, If any of you are opera lovers, as I was forced to be in my life, you might want to look at Mozart's magic flute, Zauberflöte, a wonderful opera, and the hero, Tamino, I mean, the word soul is in there, is tested with his, I suppose, partner, Tamina, by the Brotherhood. And he has to undergo, while playing the magic flute, the instrument of the Christ, the flute, Krishna and the flute, he's tested in the test of water, and then he's tested in the test of fire. Now, the test of fire is developing, and even 2,000 years ago, the disciples assembled in the upper room were tested by the tongues of flame, and they were then able to speak to anyone about the mysteries. Now, some people imitate that and they go into kind of a hysterical state called glossolalia, and they imagine that somehow they are doing the same as the disciples of old did under the impression of the Holy Spirit. But, you know, we have to take all that with a grain of salt. There's so much about glossolalia, which is still quite nonsensical, even though the idea is well established and profound. All right. Now, I just want to...
Michael?
Yeah.
Please go back to the other document and fix a couple of errors that you had in it.
Well, that's more than likely for me. Yeah, here I am, Bill. But
I
you
don't-
can't.
I can't see it. Okay. All right. In today's date, fix the word October.
8th of October,
You
today.
spelled October wrong.
Oh, PCT. Okay. Got a P instead of a...
Oh,
All right.
okay, that's fine. And the line,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
okay, this is program 185, reading 122, done on 8 October. And
Okay.
next time will be
Yeah.
186, reading 123, starting on page 201.
Okay. Starting on page 201. Right. And he wandered and wandered. Okay, well, we've got you and Joe to
But I
keep
know
us
what
straight.
you mean, and I just didn't want you to be confused again next time.
Yes, but I hope confused in a higher way. All righty.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. Now, friends, hatred. And what's going on now with the hatred is the racial pride. We don't want those Middle Easterners. We don't want those black people. We don't want those people who are colored in some way, people of color, so to speak. We are white Americans, and we want to stay that way. Well, that's the unspoken subtext of so much of what the selfish group is doing at this time. America for Americans, basically America for white men. Not only white, but male, see? Well, that's not what the Tibetan predicts. He predicts a great melting pot for the sixth root race. And he predicts that all of humanity will settle during the sixth root race, which, by the way, is going to last some 10 million years. He predicts a uniform golden color of the skin. It will be, it's very Buddhic in that way, and it will be hard to misuse the fifth ray type of discrimination, which is now being used, though the words, except from by the obvious racist groups, the words are hidden. But that's the idea. We don't want those people, you people, and inevitably race gets into it, So we need, again, if I can talk about it, you'll recognize it as the sorry, the glamour of separativeness. And under the great heresy of separativeness, the one great heresy that is. Okay, so and I think, if you think about this, you'll see how much race and color are involved, though. Oftentimes it is religion that is involved. We want only Christians. We don't want Muslims. See? Okay. That's a big one in Hungary. It's a big one in the United States at the present time. But even the Christians are not given the benefit of the doubt if they are of a different color. So it's very much an abuse of the ray which produces cleavage. What ray is that? It is the fifth ray in its abusive nature. So we'll just kind of come together here, wherever we may be geographically. And in the silence, we we get that sense of gathering. However many there are of us right now, about 30, 31, something like that. And I have named the group members before, though those that had come at the beginning of the program. So now we'll use the protective formula along with the cross of divinity, as he names it to be, and we will trace the light before ourselves and before the group. As a soul, I work in light, and darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light. I work, and from that point, I never move. We have to get the sense, not just theoretically, but actually, of the protective power of this cross. And in case we may think we don't need the protection, it's better to follow the Tibetan's advice rather than to find out the hard way. Okay. Now, we focus a dual light of matter, which essentially is etheric physical, and of lower mind, and we focus these two lights on the level of the logical reasoning lower mind. We can think, and we also consult or come en rapport with the light of the soul. By means of which we hope to see everything as it more truly is. And we bring this soul light also downward through the imagination, joining the other two lights. So in fact, the The light of matter will be irradiated by the light of the soul. The light of lower mind will be irradiated by the light of the soul. All three together. Three lights together. And they form one blended light. And we say together, followed by the three ohms, the light is one. And in that light shall we see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. And we remember that the light of day is the scorpionic light of illumination on the Buddhic plane. Oh. Oh. Okay. Now, the group uses the formula. Visualizing as we go along. DK says, visualize the great searchlight being created, and this searchlight is turning its light upon the astral plane. That is our means of revelation of glamour. That is our means of dissipating glamour. Radiance are we, and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth. The inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour. Notice inner is the same as subjective and subtle to us, but very dense otherwise, is the world of glamour. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. That's the world of the soul. And thus, with the light we work and turn the darkness into day. So we are equipped now with this beam, and the whole group is equipped with this beam of triple light fused into one beam. Now, we want to strengthen our beam because it's an arduous task we're undertaking. And we strengthen it with the spiritual will. And we say to do that and visualize with power upon its beam. The light is focused on the goal. Okay, we're going to use the words of power against the glamour of hatred, no matter how disguised it may be. It is an unjustified repulsion. It's not the same as the law of repulse, the fourth law of the triad soul. And racial pride, which usually goes with it. Remember, we could be born in any race, and eventually, outwardly, all will glow with that golden brown color. And so we say, the power of our united light prevents the appearance of the glamour of hatred and racial pride. The power of our united light negates the quality of the glamour from affecting man, humanity, us. We cannot be affected by it. And all these methods induce the sun symbolically to shine brighter upon the astral plane and in the consciousness of humanity. The power of our united light destroys the life behind the glamour, this glamour of hatred and racial pride. Now we're going to go into silence, and each one of us will deal as we wish with each one of these words of power. So let us do that for 5 minutes. We will have intensity of purpose, and whilst we see the work proceeding. need the power of the sun, both symbolically and even the sun within our nature that occurs on several levels, and the actual solar logos eventually. And then the true values of the Aquarian age can emerge, and we will not be confined in low desire and in impossible aspiration for attainment. So it is, friends, a great responsibility to keep going, banishing glamour from our own individual case, our own personality, our own groups, our own nation, and thus internationally, and finally from humanity as a whole. And the great day of standing with massed intent to do that does lie ahead. So now we withdraw our beam from the astral plane and let the lights go back to their original position, the light of matter, mind, and soul. And thus the beam is shut off. And we have done a little bit to lighten the darkness of the astral plane, where so many millions, even billions, are still confined. And let's sound the Om 3 times, imagining the work done in every level of the personality. work a little bit at a time. We work gradually. We work progressively. I do believe tomorrow at 5 o'clock we have a broadcast on climate change. I don't have it in front of me, but I think that's what it is. 5 o'clock GMT.
Yes.
Thank you. And you know, we're covering humanity's problems from many different angles. The book, The Problems of Humanity, was right, was adequate for the time it was written, and now new problems of a very serious nature have arisen, and they must be addressed esoterically. So that will be our usual go live channel, YouTube channel. Okay, friends, all of us here on the communications team want to thank you for your attendance, and we send you lots of love and the hope of constant progression into reality rather than being stuck in what we imagine reality to be. So I'll turn off the recording and end this program, but not end the quest for which this, or to which this program is dedicated. And pretty soon you'll be getting this up on Makara, and probably it will be on YouTube before long as well. I'm a little behind because I've just had a lot to do. But before long you'll have all the programs we've been making, and they will be accessible in one way or another. So lots of love, many blessings, and we'll see you on the next occasion. Bye for now.